Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. You can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic author to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Chapter 4. The visit took place. It was a formidable campaign, a nocturnal battle against pestilence and suffocation. It was, at the same time, a voyage of discovery. One of the survivors of this expedition, an intelligent working man who was very young at the time, related curious details with regard to it several years ago, which Bruneseau thought himself obliged to omit in his report to the prefect of police, as unworthy of official style. The processes of disinfection were at that epoch extremely rudimentary. Hardly had Bruneseau crossed the first articulations of that subterranean network when 8 laborers out of the 20 refused to go any further. The operation was complicated. The visit entailed the necessity of cleaning. Hence, it was necessary to cleanse, and at the same time to proceed, to note the entrances of water, to count the gratings and the vents, to lay out in detail the branches, to indicate the currents at the point where they parted, to define the respective bounds of the divers' basins, to sound the small sewers grafted on the principal sewer, to measure the height under the keystone of each drain, and the width at the spring of the vaults as well as at the bottom, in order to determine the arrangements with regard to the level of each water entrance, either of the bottom of the arch or on the soil of the street. They advanced with toil. The lanterns pined away in the foul atmosphere. From time to time, a fainting sewerman was carried out. At certain points, there were precipices. The soil had given away. The pavement had crumbled. The sewer had changed into a bottomless well. They found nothing solid. A man disappeared suddenly. They had great difficulty in getting him out again. On the advice of Fourcroy, they lighted large cages filled with tow, steeped in resin from time to time, in spots which had been sufficiently disinfected. In some places, the wall was covered with misshapen fungi. One would have said tumors. The very stones seemed diseased within this unbreathable atmosphere. Bruneseau, in his exploration, proceeded downhill. At the point of separation of the 2 water conduits of the Grand Tuileur, he deciphered upon a projecting stone the date of 1550. This stone indicated the limits where Philibert Delorme, charged by Henry II with visiting the subterranean drains of Paris, had halted. This stone was the mark of the 16th century on the sewer. Bruneseau found the handiwork of the 17th century once more in the Ponceau drain of the old Rue Villette du Temple, vaulted between 1600 and 1650, and the handiwork of the 18th in the western section of the collecting canal, walled and vaulted in 1740. These 2 vaults, especially the less ancient, that of 1740, were more cracked and decrepit than the masonry of the belt sewer, which dated from 1412, an epoch when the brook of fresh water of Ménilmontant was elevated to the dignity of the Grand Sewer of Paris, an advancement analogous to that of a peasant who should become first valet-de-chambre to the king. Something like Grosjean transformed into Lebel. Here and there, particularly beneath the courthouse, they thought they recognized the hollows of ancient dungeons, excavated in the very sewer itself. Hideous in pace, an iron neck collar was hanging in one of these cells. They walled them all up. Some of their finds were singular. Among others, the skeleton of an orang-outan who had disappeared from the Jardin des Plantes in 1800. A disappearance probably connected with the famous and indisputable apparition of the devil in the Rue des Bernardins. In the last year of the 18th century, the poor devil had ended by drowning himself in the sewer. Beneath this long arched drain, which terminated at the Arch Marion, a perfectly preserved rag picker's basket excited the admiration of all connoisseurs. Everywhere, the mire which the sewerman came to handle with intrepidity abounded in precious objects, jewels of gold and silver, precious stones, coins. If a giant had filtered the cesspool, he would have had the riches of centuries in his lair. At the point where the two branches of the Rue du Temple and of the Rue Saint-Avoy separate, they picked up a singular Huguenot, metal and copper, bearing on the one side the pig hooded with a cardinal's hat, and on the other a wolf with a tiara on his head. The most surprising rencounter was at the entrance to the Grand Sewer. This entrance had formerly been closed by a grating of which nothing but the hinges remained. From one of these hinges hung a dirty and shapeless rag, which, arrested there in its passage, no doubt, had floated there in the darkness and finished its process of being torn apart. Bruneseau held his lantern close to this rag and examined it. It was a very fine batiste, and in one of the corners, less frayed than the rest, they made out a heraldic coronet and embroidered above these 7 letters, Lavbesp. The crown was the coronet of Marquis, and the 7 letters signified Labespine. They recognized the fact that what they had before their eyes was a morsel of the shroud of Marat. Marat in his youth had had amorous intrigues. This was when he was a member of the household of the Count d'Artois, in the capacity of physician to the stables. From these love affairs, historically proved with a great lady, he had retained this sheet, as a way for a souvenir, at his death. As this was the only linen of any fineness which he had in his house, they buried him in it. Some old women had shrouded him for the tomb in that swaddling band, in which the tragic friend of the people had enjoyed voluptuousness. Bruneseau passed on. They left that rag where it hung. They did not put the finishing touch to it. Did this arise from scorn or from respect? Marat deserved both. And then destiny was there, sufficiently stamped to make them hesitate to touch it. Besides, the things of the sepulchre must be left in the spot which they select. In short, the relic was a strange one. A marquis had slept in it. Marat had rotted in it. It had traversed the Pantheon to end with the rats of the sewer. This chamber rag, of which Watteau would formerly have joyfully sketched every fold, had ended in becoming worthy of the fixed gaze of Dante. The whole visit to the subterranean stream of filth in Paris lasted 7 years, from 1805 to 1812. As he proceeded, Bruneseau drew, directed, and completed considerable works. In 1808, he lowered the arch of the Ponceau, and everywhere creating new lines, he pushed the sewer. In 1809, under the Rue Saint-Denis, as far as the Fountain of the Innocents. In 1810, under the Rue Froidmanteau, and under the Salpêtrière. In 1811, under the Rue Neuve des Petits Paris, under the Rue du Mal, under the Rue de la Charpe, under the Palace Royal. In 1812, under the Rue de la Paix, and under the Chaussée d'Antin. At the same time, he had the whole network disinfected and rendered healthful. In the second year of his work, Bruneseau engaged the assistance of his son-in-law Nargard. It was thus that at the beginning of the century, ancient society cleansed its double bottom and performed the toilette of its sewer. There was that much clean, at all events. Tortuous, cracked, unpaved, full of fissures, intersected by gullies, jolted by eccentric elbows, mounting and descending illogically, fetid, wild, fierce, submerged in obscurity, with citrices on its pavements and scars on its walls. Terrible, such was, retrospectively viewed, the antique sewer of Paris. Ramifications in every direction. Crossings of trenches, branches, goose feet, stars, as in military mines. Quercum, blind alleys, vaults lined with salpêtrière, pestiferous pools, scabby sweats on the walls, drops dripping from the ceilings, darkness. Nothing could equal the horror of this old waste crypt, the digestive apparatus of Babylon. A cavern, ditch, gulf pierced with streets, a titanic mole burrow where the mind seems to behold that enormous blind mole, the past prowling through the shadows, in the filth which has been splendor. This, we repeat, was the sewer of the past. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. And while you're there, check out our t-shirt shop. You can look in the show notes or on our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media. You can find us everywhere at Bite at a Time Books.